Okay, gentlemen, today what we're going to do is we're going to look at exercise 1B, where we're going to talk a little bit about overtime, penalty, and allowances. Now, these are awards that are given above and beyond your normal pay. And before we do that, I thought it would be a little helpful to talk about percentages a bit. Now, you can make percentages as easy or as difficult as you want to. But to make percentages easier, we can think of a few basic things. If you're dealing with a whole amount, then that's always 100%. And you may remember that to change a percent to a decimal, you simply go to the end and move the decimal 2 places to the left. So 100% is the same as 1. So you have a multiplier of 1. Now, if you're using your calculator, you can simply multiply 100 times 100%. If you know how to do that, that's fine. You don't have to change it to do a decimal if you don't want to, but if you do, that's fine. If you're talking about an increase of a certain percent, then what you mean is you're going to take your 100% plus the amount, or the percent of increase. So say, for example, that we want an increase of 15%. So instead of finding 100% and then 15%, what that means is we would simply add those two percentages together. The 100% plus the 15% means that my multiplier here is now 115%. And you can do that with any percentages, but be careful. Here we're only talking about an increase. You can do the same thing with decreases, but of course instead of adding it to it, you would be subtracting it from. So make your life easier and practice these percentages. You're going to see that that's the way the book does them as well, so you want to be consistent with what you'll be seeing in the examples and in your homework. Now, the first one we're going to look at is what happens when you're paid overtime. Now, overtime means time that's above and beyond your normal hours. And that could vary depending on your contract. Most commonly, it's 40 hours, but you could also have a normal work week of 36 hours or 37 and a half hours. So that can vary. So be careful when you're reading the question to see how much the normal work week would be. Okay? When you're dealing with that, you have two different rates. We have what's called time and a half, which means you're getting your normal 100% for your regular time, plus half of that again. So in other words, we're getting 150% of our salary. And of course, that gives us a multiplier of 1.5 if we've changed it to a decimal. You could also, depending on the circumstances of your employment, get what's called double time. So you get your original 100% plus another 100% on top of that. So 200% of your normal hourly wage, which as a decimal would be simply 2. So either one of these could apply. So be careful when you're reading the questions to see which rate the employee is getting. So let's look at an example. Now, normally I would be doing the examples in halves, but of course, remember my screen is a little funny shape, so I'm going to do it across like this. This would correspond to your examples on the right-hand side of the page. So, John works for a building construction company. Find his wage during 1 week in which he works 40 hours at the normal rate of $16 an hour, and 3 hours at time and a half rates, and 1 hour at double time. So let's just write down the information that we have. You have 40 hours at $16 per hour. That's his normal rate. He worked 3 hours at time and a half, and he worked 1 hour at double time. So we're just going to do that multiplication, and then of course we want to find a total, and finding a total means addition. So first, it's simply 40 times his normal wage of 16. And I put it in brackets because we're going to be adding these totals together. You don't have to, but be careful. Secondly, he worked 3 hours times his $16 times a multiplier of 1.5 because he was getting time and a half. So not his normal rate, we are increasing that, so we have another multiplier here. So this will give us our regular time, but we want to increase that, so we have a multiplier of 1.5. Plus, then he worked 1 hour, again at his normal rate of 16, but we need to double that, so times 2. So you'll see that when you're working more than your regular 100% salary, then, or wage, I'm sorry, you're going to get a new multiplier. And you have to do these independently. Now, if you add all of those together, you would see that you have a total of $744, which is completely worthless because we have to write our answer in words. So our completed answer is John's wage is $744. Make sure that you're answering the question in the form of a complete sentence. If not, then your answer is incorrect. Okay? So that's what happens with overtime. And these two multipliers are the typical ones. Really not going to have anything different than those for overtime. The next one we want to look at are what are called penalty rates. And these happen when you work either late at night or on a public holiday. And they vary depending on the type of employee that you are. So these are for late nights and public holidays. You might have seen that customer prices tend to go up when this happens, so the business can recoup some of this. So you may pay more for your Betty's Burger on the holiday than you would on a regular day. All right, so let's just look at a couple of these of typical scenarios. First of all, for just late night, okay, and Sundays, we have just late night and Sunday penalty rates, and they are 125% for full-time and part-time employees, and 150% for casuals. So not only do you have to know the rate that's being charged, you also have to remember what kind of employee you're working with, either full-time or part-time, or if they're just casual employees pulled in for a specific amount of time. Then we have the public holiday rates. Really, let's just call that Sunday because we're going to add in the late nights. So Sundays are those. The public holiday rates are 225% for full-time or part-time, okay, and 250% for casuals. Again, depending on your status as an employee. Now let's put late nights here because what it does with late nights, depending on, it doesn't matter what day it is, it's going to add to your normal salary. For evenings, so from 10 p.m. to midnight, then you get a 10% bonus. All right, 10% penalty. Right? Then, from midnight to 6 a.m., which is pretty much the start of the next day. Rewrite that, doesn't look very clear. There you go. You're going to get a 15% penalty. So you'll be paid 15% more for working those hours. And it doesn't matter if it's what day it is. Okay? Now, you do not have to memorize this chart. All we're going to ask for is that you be able to use it. So let's look at an example where we're going to have some penalty pay and see how we can work this. Now remember, you're going to have normal wages, you're going to have different wages on different days, etc. Okay? Now, they've already done the addition in there, so be careful. Don't get too carried away with these. So the first thing we're going to do is write down the quantity to be found. So we're going to be looking for wages that this person worked. So Milan is employed on a casual basis for a fast food company. His pay rate is $15 per hour with penalty rates shown in the table above. Okay. Last week, he worked from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Thursday. So on Thursday, he worked from 6 to 10 p.m. Now those are just normal hours on a normal weekday. So that's just regular rate. Okay. And his rate, normal rate, is $15 per hour. Write down everything that you know so that you can be very clear in what you're seeing. Right? And then on Friday, he worked from 8 p.m. till midnight. So 8 p.m. to midnight. So part of that 8 p.m., after 8 p.m. was just regular time, but then he went past the 10 p.m. cutoff time. Right? And then on Sunday, remember Sunday is a completely different animal, he worked from noon to 4 p.m. So no evening hours there, but it was on a Sunday, therefore he's going to get the Sunday rate. Right? So all we need to do is calculate the number of hours that he worked at different rates. Now, his normal hours were 4 hours here from Thursday. So from Thursday was 4 hours, and on Friday he worked from 8 till midnight, so that's from 8 till 10 gives you 2 hours of normal time. So in other words, 6 hours at his regular wage of $15 an hour. Again, pulled those from 2 different days, so be careful. Now, for evening hours, now remember, he's going to get a different rate for evening hours. On Friday, he worked from 10 p.m. to midnight. So he's not going to get that after midnight rate, but he's going to get 2 hours times his normal rate of $15 times 110% because he's getting his normal salary plus 10%. So that's an increase of 10%. So it gives you that multiplier of 110%. And then finally, Sunday hours get paid differently. He worked on Sunday for 4 hours. Therefore, he gets 4 times the $15 per hour that he would normally get times a Sunday rate, because he's a regular employee, of 150%. So those are all of your multipliers. Right? So if you take all of those things, multiply them all out, you're going to get a total of $213. And of course, we have to make sure we write this in a sentence. So Milan's wages last week were $213. Complete sentences for all of your answers, please. Okay. So we just found the number of hours that he worked and at the different rates, and then used those multipliers when necessary. Okay. Again, you'll practice these. Don't try to memorize the chart. It's not necessary. You'll be given the chart. Just pay close attention. He's a casual worker too, so we should have put that in there. Because that determines the rates that he would get. All right? Now, the last one we want to look at is something called allowances. Now, an allowance is simply an extra payment for workers who have a particular skill, or if they use their own tools, or if something for certain conditions. Okay? So, we have extra skills. You may get an allowance for that. If you use your own tools, you could get an allowance for that. or if you're working in unpleasant or dangerous conditions. So you may be working in the snow or working very high up, something like that. Okay? Now, they could be given to you in wages, but they could also be given to you as uniforms, you may be given specific tools, you may be given travel allowances and cab fare, or you may be given a car and a phone. So all of these are examples of allowances. So let's look at how we can calculate an allowance, a simple allowance. Barbara works as a builder, and she's paid $35 per hour. So she makes $35 per hour. That's just her normal rate. Plus an extra $8.50 per hour if she supplies her own tools. So an extra $8.50 per hour for supplying her own tools. So we have two distinct rates. $35 per hour when she's just working her own, and then an extra $8.50 per hour when she supplies her own tools. So we could take that 35 plus that 850 and say that when she supplies her own tools, she's going to get $43.50 per hour. So you don't have to think of these as individually. This is an hourly rate, so you could go ahead and just add that up and find out what that rate would be for those particular amounts of time. Okay, so we're looking for her wages, and it says she worked for 2 days. She worked 3 days in which they supplied her tools. So 3 days at her regular rate. So that's 3 days times 8 hours. She worked an 8-hour day. Times her rate of $35 per hour. So that's just her regular rate. On two extra days, she supplied her own tools. Okay? So for 2 days, she supplied her own tools, which means that she's going to get an extra rate, a bonus rate. So it's 2 days. Again, she worked 8 hours per day, and she's going to get not $35 an hour, but $43.50 per hour. So the rate changed because she supplied her own tools, which means that if you do all that multiplication and then add them up, she earned $1,536 last week. And of course, we want that as a sentence, so it would be Barbara earned $1,536 last week. Once we've done the calculations, we're not interested in explaining how each piece was derived. Just the total wages is what the question. How much did she earn? Okay. Now, when you're doing these, though, I need to see these calculations. So if you're doing that with your calculator, make sure that you're also writing it out on paper. I can't grade or evaluate the types of things that you do on a calculator or in your head. So make sure that you're showing these steps, even though you may be doing the math with a calculator, which is perfectly acceptable. Okay, so on your Spire page, you will see the homework for this section. So get 1B done, and then I will be releasing another video for next time. Thanks, guys.